I want to talk about two particular adverts that were an important part of Erasure. And I want to, I guess, talk to you a bit about them, ask you about them. They're two different adverts, and they're two adverts of women in service. I think this one for Serval predates the other one in terms of its representation. But you have this woman called Mandy, she looks like she's the housekeeper and cook to this couple here. Mm-hmm. I think about the scale of her. Look here, she's obscuring the door of the fridge. This is the size of how she's paid. Look at her size here. Mm-hmm. She's almost the size of two people. They're slightly set back from her, but she has this size and weight. And I was interested when I saw the Afro-futuristic film that was shown out here, that shown to me that we were looking at black people as objects, being represented as objects, domestic objects in the home. Like you move from having the representation continues where people are used in the home. And here's this woman, and she's leaving, she's quitting, she's throwing her things in the air. She has this kind of petulance of childlike expression. She wants to leave because the refrigerator is too noisy and she can't sleep at night. And so this couple rush out to this showroom and buy this new refrigerator. And here she is in her kind of childlike glee. She's so thrilled that this refrigerator is exactly what she needs for the family. She can't hear it ticking over. And the white couple, are just relieved. And she says at the end, Lordy, it sure is quiet. And then she says, looks like me and Serval are going to be with you a mighty long time. And I thought, I was so fascinating that this was right in the advert, that the direct comparison between the woman who labours in the home and the object who labours in the home, and that they're sort of twinned, that the couple now, having got the refrigerator, will now keep her. How long are they going to keep her? They're not going to keep her till she dies. They're going to keep her until she needs replacing with it, and then they're going to go to the store and get a new her. It is really the sort of the overlap between capitalism and racism is the thing that draws me to this advert over and over again. It doesn't think it's telling you what it's actually telling you. So the adverts, they're made by these clever people just to sell a fridge, but they're telling us so much more. They're betraying their political knowledge, their socio-political sort of perspective. That's what I love about these adverts. And then this second advert, I think, is a little bit later. Oh, but it says 1939, so maybe not. But a different kind of representation of a black woman in service. You know, she has this nippy waist and this little apron, but this one I loved because it focuses on all these different intersections of, I guess, all these different intersections of moments. I'll find a better way to say that. But it's for Baker's Chocolate. It says, Miss Llewell is giving her first married party. I mean, how loaded is that? She's got married, Miss Llewell, the white woman, has got married. And now she's past her first bloom. You know, the husband has married her. And now she has to sort of prove that she's not just a pretty face, that she can hold her weight as a domestic worker. And she's also, it's a party for her husband's boss. So she has to be impressive because she has to win over the boss's approval. So there's these different stages. So she goes to her black housekeeper to find out, you know, how can we make this to be a good party? And the black housekeeper, who isn't named, we don't find out her name, she suggests that she makes this cake with Baker's Chocolate. And so you see her making the cake, and then you see the cake being served at the party here. And the black housekeeper is hiding behind the curtain here so that nobody knows that it was actually her who made it. And then the white woman comes to her anxiously because all of the cake has run out. And the black woman magically reveals, well, whenever I make this cake, I always make 2 because I know how popular it is. So it's this idea of the only way that we can maintain this kind of white female domestic goddess, beautiful but also functional, is to sort of rely on the labor, the hidden labor of black women, and that the hidden labor of black women oils the wheels of the networking party so that the white men can continue to have their conversations and do their deals, and everything. The order has to be maintained on the back of these women who are hidden behind curtains. And
I was just thinking about how it, these are so complex because of how they mark like relationships, because it's like everybody is working, all the women are working in the service of these men, right?
Yeah.
And yet, like, then there's the hierarchy within that. There's like the white women who clearly hold a disproportionate amount of power over these black women who actually have all the knowledge, right? Like it creates this like really like fucked up scenario where no women can survive on their own.
And a woman can't achieve the amount of labor that's expected of her. So a woman can't look after the children and be beautiful and keep the house and cook and do all these things. That there needs to be some kind of behind the scenes labor happening with black women, and
who are expected to do all of that.
Yeah, and then black women in their own homes, they're doing these roles as well, like being the holders of their own, all the labor that exists, as well as then going into a professional context and doing that same labor again. But there's something about being behind the curtain that really reminded me of that Bronte novel that I can't think of right now. Jane Eyre. It really reminded me of Jane Eyre, where she's at the party and she's behind these heavy curtains, and she's a domestic worker, she's of low status and she can't come out. But this is, more than 100 years before this particular moment, if that is 1939. But just that it's normal and acceptable that a black woman's labour. I felt that the reason I liked the advert is because it was very relatable in terms of the microaggressions. Imagine you made a cake and then someone else carried the cake out as though they made it and took the credit for the cake. That's a really easy to understand kind of disempowering, irritating thing to happen. It's so small compared to the injustices that we sometimes see in this portal where we're looking at history. But it's very easy to relate to.
Yeah, and it's that small thing that actually, that creates or that justifies or something reinforces, or maybe even in some cases like makes invisible the more violent things. Right?
Yeah.
It's like there's something about these advertisements for me in their cheeriness, like in who they're communicating for, that just feels like it's such a like velvet glove.
Yeah.
Right? And that's, the like thinking about these in hearing you talk about these two advertisements in relation to the track Erasure just hits in a particularly different like mode, because that track to me is so organized around that refrain, they tried. And you can see like these are attempts, right? They're attempts to kind of delimit Black women's labor to a very narrow understanding or disempowering understanding. And yet like there's this, the lessons that are being communicated in here, or what they're trying to sell in here, are all attempts to create these small spaces for Black women, right?
And that's what amazes me, and that's one of the reasons I have this obsession with African American culture and with women's work and I guess the icons that have been produced from here, because I think they were people that I looked up to as I was growing up in the UK, that a really obvious shining example of Blackness was coming from across the ocean. And I had family living here who were Caribbean, but they'd moved to America. I guess they would then be perceived as being African American women, but they had grown up in the Caribbean. My aunts, they would send me books and they would send me drawings and clothes and hair stuff, but just thinking about, say, Angela Davis growing up with these kind of adverts in the newspaper that she might look through, but knowing that somehow this drawing wasn't her and that drawing wasn't her, none of those were, just the sort of maximal intellectual, sort of the full extension, the way that you can fully reject the way that someone is trying to erase you. I sometimes enjoy, if it ever happens to me where I think people are underestimating me and you kind of get a sort of pleasure from it because you think, oh, they don't know, But I really think she must have had that in such great volume, and her parents, must have instilled that feeling that you can do anything or be anything. And I think certainly Ebony magazine will have been part of that for people, of feeling that anything, they have that page about sort of movers and shakers, anything is possible. Yeah. There are no limits on you, thinking about